Hello and welcome back to Something Z, and welcome to What If Deku Went to the Support Course Part 4. Last time on the What If, Class 1A took the Provisional License exam, but sadly a good number of the students failed, and the exams just finished, so now let's jump back into the What If. Also I got this idea because I just kinda got bored, also I kinda want an excuse to play Minecraft a bit longer, so I'm going to do something different in 3, 2, 1. I don't know if I'm going to keep it like this, but why not? So now that that's out of the way, let's actually jump back into the what if. So it's now been a couple minutes since where we last left off, and when Izuku was done changing, he went back to the arena. And when he got to the center, he saw a giant board next to the main examiner, who was on a stage. And when everyone got to the center, the main examiner showed the names of the examinees that passed, with Izuku and Shinso passing, while Todoroki and Bakugo failed. Then after a couple of minutes, the main examiner said that the people that did not pass the exams will be allowed to take an extra class, and by the end of the class, they will be able to take the exams again. This includes the students in Class 1A that didn't pass the first phase of the exams. Then the people that passed went to go get their pictures taken for their licenses, and an hour later Class 1A returned to their dorms. And the fight between Bakugo and Izuku don't happen, since they can't even leave the dorm, and since Bakugo wasn't taken by himself, he doesn't feel as responsible for making All Might lose his power. So Izuku and Bakugo don't get suspended. So now we skip to the first day of school, and when the day began, UA had a ceremony, and there Class 1A learns about the hero work studies. So now we skip to a couple days later, and after the bell rang for the first period, 3 people walked into Class 1A. And after they get introduced, they try to explain the hero work studies, but they don't do a good job at actually explaining it. So after the third attempt, one of the 3 with yellow hair tells Class 1A to hurry to the gym and be ready to fight him, since if they truly want to understand it, they will have to fight him. So everyone in Class 1A hurried to get their gym clothes, and Izuku was able to grab his gear right before they had to leave. So now we skip to when everyone is in the gym, and when the fight began, all the melee fighters rushed at Mirio. But before they could reach him, he sunk into the ground, and that made them all stop, and they had to look for him. But after a couple minutes, Mirio appeared in front of Jiro, and he punched her in the gut, knocking her to the ground. And he was able to take down all the long-range fighters before the melee fighters were able to reach him. Then he began to hit the melee fighters, so now there's only Izuku and Bakugo left. And after a couple of minutes, Bakugo got hit in the stomach, launching him to the ground, so only Izuku's left. And when Izuku sees Mirio rush at him, he gets out a shrink disc from his pocket, and he was able to hit himself with it before Mirio was able to get to him. Then he hits himself with his anti-gravity, and he began to fly around. And seeing this, Mirio tries his best to swat him. And when time ran out, Izuku grew back to normal size, and he tried to use a sound bomb. But when Izuku pulled it, Mirio made his head permeated, so no sound went to his ears. Then he went to go hit Izuku in the gut, and when Izuku sees this, he tries to use his shield to block the punch. But Mirio was able to phase through it, and he was able to punch Izuku in the gut, finally knocking him to the ground. And after a couple of minutes, Class 1A was able to stand back up. And when they did, Mirio explained how his quirk was useless, until he began to train hard. And that's why he believes the hero work studies are important. And when he's done with his speech, Class 1A leave to go back to their classes. And while the big 3 were walking back to their dorms, Nighteye asked Mirio if anyone caught his eye. Then Mirio said that the quirkless kid could be very helpful to Sir. So now we skip a couple of days, and while it's lunchtime, Izuku gets called into the teacher's lounge, and when he gets there, he sees All Might and Mirio sitting on a couch. And it's there Izuku learns that Sir Nighteye has asked for Izuku to do the hero works with his agency. And hearing this, Izuku accepts the offer. So now we skip to that weekend. And when Mirio and Izuku get to the agency, they are told about the Shie Hassaikai, and the test against Nighteye doesn't happen since Izuku was actually given the offer. And when Nighteye was done explaining about the group, he sends Mirio and Izuku out to patrol. And while they were patrolling, Izuku learns that Mirio was actually holding back on them during the fight, since he apparently has another quirk that is similar to All Might's. And after a bit of patrolling, the two walk towards an alleyway. But before they could completely pass it, someone comes running from the alley and they run into Izuku, knocking him to the ground. And when Izuku sees who knocked him over, he sees a young girl. He and Mirio then look into the alleyway, and when they do, they see someone else walking out. And when they look close enough, they see that it was Overhaul. And when he got close enough, Overhaul told Yuri to come back to him, and that she is disturbing the heroes. And the whole time Overhaul was talking, Izuku was looking at the girl, and it was obvious at just a glance that she was scared, and that she didn't want to go back. So seeing this as a good opportunity to get their target, Izuku starts to reach for his staff. But when Mirio saw Izuku reach for something, he got Izuku and he picked him up. Then he told him that they should continue on their patrol around the area, but Izuku didn't move. He was too distracted on saving the girl. So eventually Overhaul said that he will explain everything if they just follow him into the alleyway. Then he began to walk deeper into the alley, but before they could follow him, Yuri runs after him when she sees him start to take off his glove. And seeing that he couldn't do anything, Izuku and Mirio continue their patrol, eventually finishing and returning back to Sir Nightaye's agency. And when they return, they tell Sir Nighteye about what happened during the patrol. And when they were done explaining, Nighteye got mad at Izuku since he could have ruined their whole operation, and he eventually said that he can't do whatever he wants since he's not as strong as All Might. And shortly after Nightaye's done lecturing Izuku goes back to his dorm room, and when he was there, he thought about what he's been hearing the past couple of days, either being told that he's not living up to his potential, or being told that he's not strong enough. So Izuku began to work on blueprints to create new gadgets to boost his power. So now he's given a couple of days, and when it's time for work study, for some reason Kirishima and Ochako followed Izuku to Nightae's agency. And when the three make it to the agency, they see many pro heroes talking to each other, with some of them being Facom and his agency, and Ryuku and her agency, and some old guy, and their teacher Aizawa. And when Sir Nighteye believes that everyone was there, he starts the meeting. And the meeting was about what they have discovered about the Shie Hassaikai, with them finding out that they are using Eri's blood to create anti-quirk bullets. And when the meeting was done, the students were told to wait in the next room over, while the pro heroes discuss important information. But after a couple of minutes, Aizawa walks up to the students, and he says that he wants them off the mission. But since he knows that Izuku would do it anyway, and since he doesn't want another dead kid, he tells them to try his best. But he will be watching them to make sure they don't act too recklessly. So now he's given a couple of days, and with those days, Izuku was given enough time to finish his gadgets. And the first gadgets he was able to make were sleeves for his arms and legs, which would boost the strength of his muscles, giving Izuku the strength of Sato while using his quirk. And just like the rest of his gadgets, he uses his glasses to power them up. They also keep him that strong for about 10 minutes. He was also able to make 6 marbles that were filled with liquid hydrogen, and when he smashes them on the ground, it is able to freeze around 2 feet of where the marble cracked. So after a couple of days, Sir Nighteye was able to get the information he needed, so he called everyone to meet him at his agency. And when they get there, they are told where Overhaul is keeping Eri. So now we skip to the next day, when it was around 8:30 AM. And when the raid began, the police officer knocked on the front door, and they shouted that they have a warrant. But right after they said this, a giant villain burst through the wall, and he launches some police officers. So Ryuku's agency went to fight the villain, while Sir Nighteye's agency, Facom's agency, some pro heroes and officers ran deeper into the base. But when they actually get into the main room, they get attacked by more goons, which Bubble Girl and Centipeder were able to distract, allowing the rest of the group to continue on. But after a bit of running down the hallway, the group comes across a wall, which Mary decides to use One for All in his permeation. He then runs through the wall at high speeds, and he decides to go for Overhaul by himself. And when the group makes it to the wall, Izuku pulled out the light cannon, and he turned it to max power, and he blasted the wall, creating a decent-sized hole. Then Kirishima punches the wall as well, making the hole even bigger. And when it was big enough, the group walked through it. Then they continued to walk through the hallway, and after around 5 minutes, the hallway started to twist and contort, making it hard to continue. And before they could do anything, Mimic creates a hole under the heroes, which Izuku could have flown above, but since he didn't want to be split off from the group, he fell with them. And when they all landed, they find themselves in a room with 3 goons, which Tamaki believed that he could handle on his own. And after hearing this, Facom forces everyone else to leave the room, and even though they were reluctant, the group kept running. And after a couple of minutes, Mimic decides to attack Aizawa, so he launches a pillar at him that would have crushed him. But Facom and Kirishima jump to Aizawa, and they push him out of the way, so they get hit instead, and they get launched into another room, splitting them from the rest of the group. And after a couple of minutes, the main group continues to run down the corridor. And after another couple of minutes, the group comes across Mimic, twists the hallways again. And this time, Rocklock used his special move to make the walls stay in place. But the moment he did this, Mimic split the group from each other by creating walls of cement, with each room having at least 2 people, with Izuku and Aizawa trapped with each other. In trying to get to the others, Izuku activates his light cannon at full power, and he shoots the wall next to him, creating a hole big enough so they can get through, leaving Izuku with one more light cannon blast before it completely runs out of power. And when they enter the next room over, they see 2 Rocklocks, with one seemingly unharmed, while the other one has a stab wound. But Aizawa was able to see through it, so he used his quirk on the Rocklock without the stab wound, and he started to transform back to her original form, revealing it to be Toga, who then starts to attack the 2. And before they were able to capture her, she was able to escape. But right before she leaves, she was able to stab Aizawa in the back, which wasn't that bad since it was just enough to draw blood, but nothing else. And shortly after that, Izuku uses his sleeves and shield to create another hole in the wall, allowing the rest of the group to meet up with them. And after a couple of minutes, Mimic starts to sink the group deeper into the ground. And when he did this, to the group's surprise, Toga and Twice seemed to be purposefully trying to rile up Mimic. And after a couple of minutes, Izuku was able to pinpoint where Mimic was, so he used his final light cannon blast at full power. And when it hit where Mimic was, it created an opening to the real Mimic. And when Aizawa saw this, he used his quirk to nullify Mimic's quirk, making him start to fall to the ground. And right before he hit the ground, Nighteye hit him with his high-density seals, knocking him out, and Izuku flew up to him, and he used one of his anti-gravity plates to make him weightless. so Izuku could safely put Mimic onto the ground, and after tying up Mimic, Izuku, Aizawa, and Nighteye continued to run down the corridor, eventually leading them to another wall. And this time, Izuku, with a running start, runs at the wall as fast as he could with his legs activated. With his legs activated. With his legs activated, and he rammed himself into the wall, shield first, and he was able to run through it with only a couple of scratches. And when the three walked into the next room, they see Mirio fighting Overhaul, with him already fused to his henchman, and on the ground there was an anti-quirk bullet. And far away, there was Eri, who was hiding behind a spike wrapped in Mirio's cape. And seeing what was going on, Nighteye told Izuku to grab Eri and go, which at first he didn't want to do, but seeing as he knew he couldn't do anything else to help, Izuku flies to Eri and he scoops her up. And he used his last anti-gravity plate, making her weightless, and he began to fly back to the hallway. And when Overhaul saw this, he tried to attack Izuku, but he wasn't able to hit him since Mirio was able to stop him. And by the time Izuku gets to where Rocklock and the police were, Mirio, with the help of Sir Nighteye and Aizawa, were able to take down Overhaul. And the mission was considered not a failure, since less damage happened around the area, since it was mostly contained either on the streets or the actual base. And Nighteye was able to survive because with the help of a powered up Mirio, he was able to not get as injured. So now we skip a couple of hours, and all the people that were injured were taken to the hospital. And on the way to the police station, the same things happened. So Overhaul got his hands cut off, and Shigaraki now has some anti-quirk bullets. So now we skip around a week, and when it was time for class, Aizawa announces that they will have to decide what they will do for the UA school festival. And after some, they come up with an idea for what to do for the festival, which was a dance. And the next day, Izuku and Mirio went to go visit Eri in the hospital, since they didn't know where to put her, since she didn't seem to have any other relatives that they know of, and they don't trust her enough to put her in a normal orphanage. And when they get to Eri's room, they talk about how she's doing, and it was obvious that she was still upset, and it was obvious that she was still closed off. So Izuku and Mirio asked if they can bring her to the festival. And they were given the okay as long as there's someone there to watch her. And after they were given the okay, the two leave the hospital and they go back to their dorms. So now we skip to the day of the actual festival. And what Izuku was doing for the festival, he made some adjustments to his marbles. So when he throws them into the air, shiny dust comes out of them. And he still has the same rules in the canon, so Izuku starts off dancing, then leaves mid-performance, since now he has enough strength to lift Ayama around the room. And on the day of the festival, since he had to buy a replacement rope, because the one Ayama and him were using has become worn out from the practicing. So Izuku just left the store, and when he was about to run back to the school, he bumps into an older gentleman and a young lady. He then apologizes, but before he could start to run back to the school, he was able to recognize the voices of the two as La Brava and Gentle Criminal. They then take off the disguises they were wearing, and they begin to launch themselves towards UA, with the help of Gentle's quirk. Izuku then pulled out his glasses and he activated his shoes, launching him into the air, and he flew to the two as fast as he could. And while he was chasing after them, he pulled out his phone, and he called UA security, and he told them about the two that were about to try to infiltrate the school. And eventually when the three make it to UA, the outside of the school was on high alert, since they didn't want to worry the students that were inside. So when they landed, Izuku tried to fight Gentle, but every time he launched himself at Gentle, Gentle would use his quirk to make the air springy, launching Izuku away. And after a couple of minutes, security was able to find the three fighting. So with the help of Hound Dog, Ectoplasm, and around 10 guards, they were able to beat the two. And since they knew about La Brava, she was considered a Gentle's accomplice. And when the two were taken away, Izuku remembered that he had his activity in about 15 minutes. So he began to fly back to the store to get the rope he left. And he was able to get to the school with enough time to change and get his gear. And when the show began, Izuku started to dance. He grabbed Ayama and flew to the rafters. Then he tied Ayama with the rope. And while Ayama was spinning, Izuku threw his marbles. And when they were high enough, Ayama fired his naval laser at them, making the marbles explode. And the dust began to fly everywhere. And when the lasers hit the dust, it made the entire roof glow up. Then after that, the show continues as it does in the canon. So by the end of it, Eri smiled, and everything from here on out will be around the same, with Endeavor trying to become the new #1 hero. So I guess this is where I'm going to leave the What If. It was fun making this, and I hope you enjoyed it, even if it was shorter than every other What If I've made. Also, tell me if you enjoy what I did. Anyways, I hope to see you next time on Something Z.